Welcome to today's story. I hope you enjoy it. Remember that if you do enjoy the story, to like and subscribe for more content like this. And please let me know any suggestions for stories you might want to hear in the comments below. Happy listening. Chapter 1. The Problem in the Textbooks. The lecture hall smelled of dust, ink, and old paper, the same as it did every morning. Long wooden benches faced a chalkboard filled with careful lines of bone shapes and muscle bands. Elias Harrow sat in the front row, back straight, coat folded over the seat beside him, notebook placed square with the edge of the desk. He kept his tools in order, pencil sharp, pages clean, no stray marks. The body, he believed, should be studied with the same order. Professor Linton tapped the page of a large wall chart with a thin stick. The female torso, he said, voice flat from years of use. The chart showed a smooth figure, simple curves, muscles shaped like cloth folds, all neat and even. Elias copied the lines into his notebook with steady care, yet as he drew, his jaw tightened. The shapes were too clean. The skin layer looked like it had been pressed flat with an iron. The small bends and shifts that made a body real were gone. He had seen bodies that did not match these charts. In the clinic room below the hall, women sat on hard chairs with hands folded tight in their laps. Some came with pain that had no clear name. Some had swelling or strain that did not fit the flat lines in the books. Elias had watched older doctors press here, tap there, then shrug. Normal, they would say, and send the woman home. He did not speak during those moments, but the word normal stayed in his mind like a stone in a shoe. The professor turned the chart to show the side view. Again the figure looked smooth and simple, like a statue left in rain too long. Elias raised his hand. He did not do this often. The room quieted, as it always did when he spoke. "Sir," he said, voice calm. The muscle band along the lower side seems placed too high. In clinic last week, I saw a strain that sat lower and angled more toward the hip. A few students shifted. One gave a short breath through his nose. Professor Linton looked at Elias for a long moment, then back at the chart. "These drawings have served for many years," he said. "They show the common form. Small shifts vary by person." "Yes, sir," Elias said, though the answer did not settle in him. "Small shifts." The phrase felt like a door closed with care, not slammed, but firm all the same. He lowered his hand and wrote the phrase in the margin of his page. Small shifts. He circled it once. After the lesson, he went to the study room near the lab. Tall shelves held thick books with cracked spines. He pulled one down and laid it open on the table. The page showed the same flat torso, same even skin. He turned the page. Again. And again. The figures changed pose, but not truth. They looked like plans for a building, not a living form that breathed, bent, and bore weight. A classmate, Martin, dropped into the seat across from him. "Still chasing faults in the books?" he asked with a grin. "You will wear them out. If the plan is wrong, the work that follows will also be wrong," Elias said. He kept his eyes on the page. Martin shrugged. "The body is close enough. We treat illness, not art." Elias did not answer at once. He traced the line of the ribcage on the page, then stopped. "Close enough leaves room for harm," he said. A hand placed 1 inch off can miss a cause. A cut placed wrong can cost more than time. Martin leaned back. "You think too hard." Elias closed the book with care. Thinking is the work. That evening he stayed late in the clinic. A woman in her 30s came in with pain low in her side. She spoke softly, eyes on the floor. Elias listened, asked clear questions, kept his tone even. When she left, he pulled the chart from the wall and studied it. The line that marked the muscle path did not match what his hand had felt through cloth and skin. He drew a new line in his notebook, lower, angled, not smooth. His pencil moved slow, not from doubt, but from care. He sat back and looked at the two drawings, the book and his own. The book felt safe, approved, sealed by years. His line felt raw, like a thought not yet fit for speech. Still, he kept looking at it. He did not think of the body as warm or soft or marked by time. He thought of joints, bands, load, and force. A system of parts. If the parts were mapped wrong, the system would fail. Outside, the hall lamps went dim one by one. Elias packed his notebook, slid it into his case, and stood. He believed in clear plans, clean facts, and work done without drift. Error, once seen, should be fixed. That was the rule he trusted. He stepped into the dark hall, the echo of his steps steady and sure. Already turning over lines in his mind, searching for where the drawing and the truth no longer met. Chapter 2. Mara Vale. The room was cold even in the late afternoon. Thin light came through the high window and turned the dust in the air into a pale mist. Mara Vale stood near the wall where the floorboards were smooth from years of feet and chair legs. A wool wrap hung from her shoulders, pinned at the front with a small brass clip she had owned since she was a girl. She waited while the painter mixed color at his table, his back to her, brush tips set in a jar like tools in a cup. Waiting was part of the work. "Ready when you are," he said without turning. Mara stepped onto the low platform in the center of the room. She did not rush. She had learned that speed made others think the work was careless. Care brought better pay and fewer words spoken in low voices after she left. She set her feet in the marked spots on the wood, let the wrap slide down her arms and placed it on the chair behind her. The air touched her skin. She did not flinch. "Hold the turn," the painter said. She lifted her chin a small amount and shifted her weight to her back foot. Stillness came to her the way balance comes to a tightrope walker. It was not magic. It was skill. She knew how long a shoulder could stay raised before the tremor began, how to lock the hip without pain, how to breathe so the chest moved as little as possible. She watched the wall across from her, a small crack near the floor where the plaster had split years ago. If she fixed her eyes there, the rest of the room grew quiet in her mind. She felt the look on her the way one feels sun on skin through thin cloth. Some looks slid off, dull and bored. Some pressed, heavy and slow. The painter's look was sharp and quick, measuring angles, tracing lines. She could tell when a person saw shape, and when they saw only a story they wished to tell about her. The first was work. The second she learned to step around like a hole in the road. When the break came, she wrapped the wool around her shoulders again and sat near the stove that gave more smoke than heat. The painter handed her a coin and a slice of bread from his tin. "Good hold," he said. "Thank you," she replied. She counted the coin in her palm before placing it in the small purse tied inside her skirt. Rent was due in 4 days. The purse was light. After the studio, she walked the long street toward her room. Shop windows showed hats and gloves she would never wear. 2 women passed her and fell quiet, their eyes moving from her boots to her face, then away. Mara kept her gaze ahead. She had learned that meeting such eyes made the walk longer. Her room sat above a tailor's shop. The stairs creaked with each step. Inside, the space was narrow but clean. A basin, a chair, a small bed. On the shelf by the window lay a book with worn edges. She had found it in a market stall and paid with half a week's spare coin. She washed, lit the lamp, and opened the book. The words moved slow at first, then faster as her mind found their pace. She liked how the lines built one on the next, how a thought could stand firm if shaped with care. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Dallow from the next room stood there, lips pressed thin. Men came asking which rooms were rented, she said. "You should be careful." "I am careful," Mara said. Mrs. Dallow's eyes drifted to the shelf, to the book, then back. "Some work brings talk," she said. "Talk does not pay the rent," Mara replied, voice even. When the door closed, Mara sat on the bed and pressed her thumb to the purse under her skirt, feeling the coins through cloth. The work paid little, and not every day. If she fell ill, there was no cushion. Still, she chose the studios that treated the work as craft. She turned down rooms where the air felt thick with other aims. Her body was part of the trade, yes, but so were time, skill, and control. She decided how to stand, when to rest, when to leave. That choice was a line she did not let others cross. She lay back and looked at the ceiling where water stains formed shapes like maps. She did not think of herself as a secret or a warning. She thought of her hands, steady when she mended cloth, of her back, strong from long holds, of her mind, clear when she sorted the day. The world could place a mark on her name, but it could not reach inside and write there without her leave. The lamp burned low. She closed the book, set it by the bed, and turned the wick down. Tomorrow she would return to the platform, to the crack in the wall, to the stillness that was not empty but full of work she knew how to do. Chapter 3. The Proposal. The studio sat at the back of a narrow lane, above a print shop that smelled of ink and damp wood. The stairs were steep and worn in the middle from years of feet. Elias climbed them with one hand on the rail, and the other holding a leather case tight to his side. He had chosen this place because it was not tied to the school. No plaques, no staff who knew his name. Just a room with plain walls, a high window, and a stove in the corner that ticked as it cooled. Mara stood near the window when he entered, her wool wrap drawn close against the chill. Her hair was pinned up, a few loose strands near her neck. She watched him in the quiet way of a person who waits to see what kind of man has walked through the door. "Miss Vale," he said, setting his case on the table. "Thank you for meeting." She gave a small nod. You said it was not painting work. No, he replied at once. It is for study, medical study. I am training in the field of medicine. My aim is to improve diagrams used for care. He opened the case and took out a notebook, a pencil roll, and a small ruler. He placed each item on the table in a neat line, as if the order itself might explain his purpose. Mara did not sit. What kind of study? Anatomical reference, he said. Surface form as it relates to structure below. Muscle bands. Natural shifts in shape with stance and breath. The charts in use are simplified. He paused, then added, too simplified. She stepped closer to the table and looked at the page he had opened. It showed lines of the torso, front and side views, careful marks and notes in the margin. You want a body to copy from, she said, voice calm. Yes, he said, to observe, to record accurate form. Not ideal form, not posed for effect. Just what is present. His words came fast, like he had practiced them. This is not for display, not for sale. It is for correction of error in teaching material. Mara watched his face, not the page. You speak like a man in a court, she said. Elias blinked, then looked down at the notebook. I want to be clear. Clear is good, she said. So am I. I do modeling work. I hold poses. I keep still. But I choose the rooms I work in. I choose the men I work for. He nodded. Of course. She moved to the stove and touched its side, then drew her hand back from the heat. What hours? Late afternoon, he said. After clinic. 2 hours at a time. With breaks, pay. He named a sum. It was more than she often received, less than he would pay for a term of books. She did not show surprise, but she did not accept at once. What will you do with the drawings? She asked. Keep them private, he said, locked, used only for study. If they are ever shown, it would be in a formal medical setting. Without name, without my name, she said. Yes. She walked to the center of the room and stood on the low platform. You need to look, she said. At length. In detail. Yes, he said, and his voice grew thin. She turned her head and met his eyes. He held the look for a moment, then glanced down at his ruler, at the page, anywhere else. She saw the shift and marked it. Not shame, not hunger, strain. Like a man holding a weight he insists is light. I set terms, she said. You keep to time. You speak to me as you do now, plain. No jokes. No friends brought in. If I say stop, we stop. If I say break, we break. Agreed, he said at once. And one more, she added. You see me as work, not as story. Elias frowned, not in anger, but in effort. I see a subject for study, he said. A form to map. She gave a half smile that did not reach her eyes. That is close enough. He gathered his pencil and moved to the chair facing the platform. His hand shook once as he set the tip to the page. He steadied it and looked up, then down again, then up. We can begin with a neutral stance, he said. Feet apart, arms at rest. Mara loosened the pin at her wrap and let the cloth slide from her shoulders. She did not rush. The air in the room felt warmer now, though the stove had not changed. She set her feet and let her arms hang loose. Elias drew a line, then another, eyes moving in quick paths over shoulder, waist, hip, back to the page. He spoke as he worked. The angle here is lower than in the charts, he said, and the shift of weight changes the line along the side. His voice found steadiness in the language of parts and measure. Mara watched him from the corner of her eye. He did not stare in the way some did. He studied. Yet each time their eyes met by chance, he looked away first. She held the pose, and the silence between them, feeling the work settle into place like a new beam set into a frame. Chapter 4. Learning to See. The room held the quiet of a place not often used. Dust had settled into the corners where wall met floor, and the stove gave a soft tick as the metal cooled and warmed again. Elias had lit the lamp early. Its glow spread in a wide circle, leaving the edges of the studio in dim shade. He set his chair in the same spot as the day before and opened his notebook to a clean page. The paper looked bright and empty, waiting. Mara stood near the platform with her wrap around her shoulders. She watched him arrange his tools in a straight line along the table. Pencil, ruler, spare sheets. Each object had a place. When he nodded, she stepped onto the platform and let the wrap fall onto the chair behind her. She did not look at him. She set her feet a hand's width apart and let her arms rest at her sides. "Neutral stance," Elias said, more to himself than to her. He leaned forward and made the first mark. His eyes moved up, down, up again, quick and sharp, like a bird searching the ground. He drew the outline of the shoulder, the slope of the side, the line where hip met leg. Each glance was brief, almost clipped, as if longer sight might break some rule he held. The room was still. Outside, a cart rolled past on the street below, the wheels dull on the stones. Inside, the only sound was the soft scratch of pencil on paper. The lamp gave off a low warmth. It settled on skin and cloth and wood alike, taking the chill out of the air. Elias shifted in his chair. "Hold as you are," he said. His voice had found the even tone he used in the clinic. He looked again, this time a beat longer. He traced the line of the ribcage with his eyes before setting it on the page. He paused at the curve where breath changed the shape by a small degree, then marked that change with a light stroke. Mara fixed her gaze on a nail-head in the wall across from her. She felt the look on her in the way she felt the lamp's heat. It was not heavy, not pressing. It moved in paths, mapping. She let her breath slow, deep but steady, the rise and fall small. She knew the work asked for stillness, but not the stiff stillness of a held breath. Real bodies moved, even at rest. Elias leaned back, then forward again. The quick glances began to lengthen. His eyes stayed on one place long enough to measure, not just note. He looked at the angle of the collar line, the slight shift of weight that made one hip carry more load than the other. He drew, erased, drew again. The warmth in the room grew. A bead of heat gathered at his neck under the collar. He ignored it. He did not think of warmth as warmth, only as a change in air that might alter comfort and by that posture. He told himself this as he looked. His pencil stopped mid-line. He had reached the curve where side met waist, where the form changed from plane to bend. His hand held still for a moment too long. Then he cleared his throat and made a small mark, light, almost shy. He moved on to the arm, the wrist, the hand at rest. Mara noticed the pause. She did not shift. She had seen such pauses before in other rooms, though they carried a different weight there. Here, the pause felt like a step missed on a stair, then found again. She kept her face calm and her stance easy, giving him nothing to react to. "Good," Elias said, after a while, though he did not say what was good. He turned the page and began a second view, this time from a slight angle. He rose from the chair and moved it 2 steps to the side. The scrape of wood on floor sounded loud in the quiet. He sat again and looked. From this new place, the line shifted. The shoulder hid part of the chest. The sideline changed shape. He studied the change, eyes steady now, not darting. The act of looking had settled into a task like any other. He measured with his sight, not his hand. The lamp flame flickered once, then steadied. Shadows moved along the wall, soft and slow. The air held a faint scent of oil and warm metal. Time thinned. The room seemed to hold only 3 things: the light, the page, the form before him. "Break," Mara said at last, voice low but firm. Elias blinked as if waking. "Yes, of course." He set the pencil down with care. His fingers were smudged grey at the tips. He did not look at her as she reached for the wrap, but he felt the air shift when cloth met skin again. He studied the page instead. The lines were not smooth like the charts in the hall. They bent, dipped, rose. They looked less perfect, more true. He ran his finger along one line, not touching the paper, just tracing the path in air. When she sat near the stove, he kept his eyes on the drawing. The work had begun to show him not only where the lines went, but how long he could hold a look without losing his place. That too he marked, though not on the page. Chapter 5. The Limits of Detachment. Elias returned the next day with 2 lamps instead of 1. He carried them up the stairs in careful steps, stopping once to shift his grip when the metal grew warm against his palms. The studio was the same narrow room, the same platform, the same chair with a worn seat. Yet the light changed everything. He set one lamp on the table near his papers and the other on a stool closer to the platform. He turned the wicks up and down until the glow fell in clean shapes, bright along one side and soft along the other. Mara watched without speaking. She had seen men fuss with light for effect, but his face held the look of a man solving a problem. He moved the stool an inch, then another, then leaned back as if checking a line on a wall. "This will help with contour," he said, voice even. "Contour," Mara repeated, not as mockery, but as a note. He opened his notebook to a page filled with yesterday's lines. "The shadow edge makes the form clear," he said. "In the charts, the body is shown like a flat plan. That is not how it appears." Mara stepped onto the platform and let her wrap fall onto the chair. She set her feet apart and held her arms loose, as they had agreed. The lamps made her skin look warmer, less pale, as if the room itself had poured color onto her. "Same stance," Elias said. He sat, then stopped. "Turn slightly," he added. "Just a small degree." Toward the lamp, she turned. The shift was small, but it changed the entire line of her shoulder and the curve of her side. Elias leaned forward and drew a first mark, then a second. His hand was steadier than before. The work had moved from trial to method. He glanced up, down, up again, but the glances were longer now. He held them, measured them. He told himself it was needed. The line did not exist on the page until he had traced it with his eyes enough times to trust it. He began to speak as he drew, as if words could keep the work on rails. "The rib line is not uniform. It varies with breath and stance. The lower edge here is higher than the book shows, but only at this angle." His pencil moved with the words. Mara held still. The longer look did not trouble her. It was part of the task. Yet she felt the change in the room. The lamps made the air thick with heat, and the heat made silence feel closer. Even a small sound, the scrape of pencil, the soft shift of his sleeve, stood out. Elias rose without warning and moved the stool 2 steps to the left. "Light from here will show the plane better," he said. He adjusted the wick until the glow narrowed. "Hold." Mara held. He sat again, then leaned in, his eyes fixed on the curve where side met waist. He stared, measured, then drew. He erased a line and drew it again, lighter, more exact. His pride in accuracy settled over him like a coat. He could fix this, he thought. He could repair what the charts had failed to show. Yet the longer he studied, the more he became aware of himself studying. The thought came uninvited, quiet but sharp. "I am looking." He pushed it away and replaced it with another thought. "I am observing." The difference between the 2 words should have been solid. It should have held. Instead, it felt thin, like paper held up to light. His pencil stopped, not because he had reached a hard point in the drawing, but because his mind had stumbled. He watched a breath move through her, a small lift, a small fall. The shift changed the line by almost nothing, yet it changed the room. It reminded him, in a way the cadaver lab never did, that the body before him was alive. He cleared his throat and forced the pencil to move again. "Take a smaller breath," he said, then heard his own words and felt a flush rise in his face. It was a proper instruction, he told himself. A model could control breath to keep a pose. That was all. Mara's eyes moved to him for the first time since the session began. She did not look offended. She did not look amused. She looked calm, as if she had been waiting for him to notice the thing he was trying not to notice. Elias kept his gaze on the page. "I mean," he said, softer, "for steadiness." "I know," Mara said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. She knew. She knew the difference between the look that measured and the look that drifted. She knew he was fighting to keep his mind inside the walls he had built. He made himself look up again, just once. Their eyes met. It was not a long meeting. It was a short bridge laid across a gap. He saw in her face not shame, not invitation, but a clear awareness that he was a man trying to be pure in thought by force alone. His eyes dropped back to the page. He drew faster for a moment, then slowed. He adjusted the line until it matched what he saw, not what he wished to see. The session ended with no harsh words, no broken rules. Mara wrapped herself and stepped down. Elias gathered his papers as if the room were on fire and he needed to leave with his work intact. At the door, he paused with his hand on the latch. "Thank you," he said, voice tight. Mara nodded. "You are welcome." He walked down the stairs into the evening air and felt the cold hit his face like water. He told himself the heat of the room had made him unsettled. He told himself the lamps had been too close, the air too thick. Yet as he crossed the street, he found his mind returning to one moment, the short meeting of eyes, and the way it had made the whole task feel less like lines on paper and more like a test he had not known he was taking. Chapter 6. conversations in stillness. On the third day, the air in the studio felt warmer before the lamps were even lit. The stove had been fed early, and the metal gave off a steady heat that softened the chill in the walls. Elias arrived with his case under his arm and a small bundle of paper tied with string. He set it on the table, then stood still for a moment as if he were listening to the room. Mara came in a few minutes later, wrap around her shoulders, hair pinned up, boots damp from the street. She closed the door behind her and looked at the lamps, now placed with care, as if they had always belonged there. "You have made this your room," she said. Elias glanced at the stool, then the platform. "It is rented by the hour," he replied. "Yes," Mara said, and the word carried a quiet note that he could not place. He lit the lamps and adjusted the wicks until the light fell in the same angles as before. The glow drew clear edges on the wall and left the corners dark. Elias opened his notebook to a clean page, then to the last drawing, as if checking his own steps. "Same stance," he said. Mara stepped onto the platform and let her wrap fall. She took the position with little effort, her weight set, her shoulders level, her arms resting easy. Elias began to draw. His eyes moved slower now, more sure. He measured, marked, erased, marked again. The quiet settled around them like a cloth. After some time, Mara spoke without turning her head. "Break?" Elias looked up, blinked, and nodded. "Yes." He set the pencil down and rubbed his fingers together, grey dust falling in a fine line onto the page. Mara wrapped herself and sat near the stove. Elias poured water from a small tin into a cup and offered it to her. She took it with a nod. He sat on the chair facing the platform, but his notebook stayed closed on the table. He spoke first, as if he had been holding the words back. "In the clinic," he said, "women often come with pain that has no clear mark. They are told it is nothing." Mara took a sip of water. "That is not new." Elias leaned forward. "I see it happen. A woman says she cannot sleep, cannot stand straight, cannot eat without nausea. The doctor asks 2 questions, presses once, then says she worries too much." He kept his voice level, but the tightness in it showed. "They speak as if her words are not evidence." Mara looked at the stove door, at the faint red glow behind the grate. "They think a woman will lie," she said, "or that she will turn small pain into big pain for attention, or that she cannot tell the difference," Elias said. Mara gave a short nod. "Yes." She held the cup in both hands, fingers around the metal. "When my sister was alive, she had a pain low in her belly that came and went. She went to the clinic twice. They told her it was a monthly trouble and sent her away with bitter tea." Elias did not speak. "The third time, she could not walk," Mara went on. "She was bent over like an old woman. A new doctor looked at her and ordered a real check. By then the fever was high. She was gone in a week." Elias's throat moved as he swallowed. "If they had looked earlier," he said. "If they had listened," Mara replied. Her voice stayed calm, but the calm was the kind that came after grief had burned through a person and left a hard layer behind. Pain is treated like a mood. A woman is treated like a story, not a body. Elias opened his notebook and flipped to a page of the school chart he had copied in class. A clean outline, smooth and simple. "These drawings," he said, tapping the paper, "do not help. They hide the truth under neat lines." Mara leaned closer, studying the page. "They make the body look like it was built in a shop," she said. "No marks, no difference from one person to the next." Elias looked at her hands, at the faint callus on one finger, the kind made by needle and thread. He looked away at once and fixed his gaze on the book. "The school says the common form is enough," he said, "but I keep thinking of how a wrong map harms the one who is lost." Mara set the cup down. "You speak as if the body is only parts," she said. Elias stiffened. "It is parts," he replied, then caught himself. "It is also the person." Mara's eyes met his. "It is always the person," she said, "even when you try to make it only parts." The words sat between them. Elias felt heat rise in his face, and hated that it did. He wanted to answer in clean terms, to turn the talk into a lecture with safe borders, yet her look did not accuse. It only held steady, like the platform underfoot. They sat in silence for a moment. The stove popped once as the wood shifted. Outside, someone laughed in the lane below, then the sound faded. Elias spoke again, slower now. "I am taught to be detached," he said, "to see without feeling. To keep the mind clear." Mara's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "Clear is not the same as empty," she said. "A clear window still shows what is outside." He let out a breath he had not known he held. "Do you ever feel shame?" he asked, and at once he wished he had not asked it in that way. Mara did not flinch. "I do not feel shame for my body," she said. "I feel anger at what people attach to it." She tilted her head a small amount. A man can look and call it study. A woman can stand and be called a warning. Elias nodded, eyes on the floor. "That is why I asked you to keep your name out," he said. "That helps you," Mara said, not cruelly, simply. "It does not help me." Elias's hands clenched once on his knees. "You are right," he said. The admission came out plain, without argument. The break ended. Mara stood, loosened her wrap, and stepped back onto the platform. Elias moved the chair without scraping it, careful not to disturb the quiet. He took his pencil and began again. This time, his looking changed. It held the memory of what she had said. He did not look at a shape and think only of muscle bands and angles. He thought of pain called mood, of listening dismissed, of bodies made neat on paper so men could stay comfortable. He drew with more care, not softer, not slower, but more honest. Mara held her pose and watched his eyes in brief glances. They both knew the room carried more than work now. Still, the rules held. No touch, no careless words. Only the lamp's warmth, the sound of pencil, and the charged quiet of two people sharing a task that asked for truth, while the world outside insisted on a different story. Chapter 7. The Portfolio. Elias spread the sheets across the long table in the study room, weighing the corners down with thick books so the paper would lie flat. The morning light from the tall windows was thin and grey, but it was steady, and that was what he needed. He stood with his hands on the table edge and looked at the drawings one by one, as if they were not his own work but samples set out for judgment. The figures did not resemble the clean plates in the school texts. These lines dipped and rose, shifted with stance, carried the slight uneven balance that came from real weight on real bone. The shoulder did not sit like a carved block. The sideline did not sweep in a smooth arc. He had marked where breath altered shape, where a turn of the hip changed the line along the back. Nothing in the drawings asked to be admired. They asked to be used. He picked up the first sheet and laid it over the old textbook plate he had copied weeks before. The difference was plain. The book showed a body that could belong to anyone and no one. His sheet showed a body that had to belong to someone. He told himself that was the point. A doctor worked on a person, not a pattern. He gathered the pages into a stack and tied them with the string he kept in his case. His fingers left faint grey marks on the edge of the paper. He did not wipe them away. The marks felt like proof that the work had cost something. "Still at it?" a voice said behind him. Elias turned. Martin stood in the doorway, coat unbuttoned, hair damp from the mist outside. He stepped in without waiting to be asked, and leaned against the shelf. "You look like a clerk counting tax slips," he said with a grin. Elias placed the stack back on the table. "I am organizing reference sheets." "Let me see," Martin said, already moving closer. Elias hesitated a moment too long. Martin saw the pause and smiled wider. He reached out and pulled the top sheet free before Elias could speak. Martin's grin faded as his eyes moved over the page. He did not laugh. He did not make a crude remark. He stared. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "I made it," Elias said. "From what? From observation?" Martin looked up, then back at the sheet, then at the stack. He flipped to the next page, then the next. His breath came through his nose in short pulls. "You sat and looked at a woman like this." "I studied form," Elias said. "For accuracy." Martin gave a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "Accuracy?" he repeated. "You expect me to believe this is just study?" He held up a sheet where the figure stood at a slight angle, the light and shadow making the form clear. "This is not what we are given in class." "That is why I did it," Elias said, and his voice grew tight. "The class material is wrong in key areas." Martin set the sheets down with more force than needed. If Professor Linton sees these, he will not speak of muscle bands. He will speak of conduct. Elias felt heat climb his neck. There is no misconduct, he said. No touch, no display, only drawing. Martin shook his head. You think the board will split hairs that fine? A student with private drawings of a woman's body. You may call it study. Others will call it something else. The words hung in the air. Elias reached for the stack, but Martin was faster. He lifted several sheets at once. These will make a stir, he said, half warning, half thrill. Give them back, Elias said. Martin hesitated, then placed the sheets down, but not in a neat stack. Edges stuck out. Corners bent. You should hide them, he said. Or burn them. I will not burn them, Elias replied. Martin shrugged and moved toward the door. Suit yourself, but you cannot expect to work in shadows and remain unseen. When he left, the room felt smaller. Elias gathered the pages, smoothing the bent corners with care. His hands shook once, then stilled. He tied the string again, tighter this time. As he closed his case, he heard voices in the hall outside. His name came through the door, low but clear. He could not catch every word, but he heard enough. Drawings? Woman? Indecent? He stood with the case in his hand and felt a slow weight settle in his chest. The work had not changed. The lines were the same as they had been an hour before. Yet the air around them had shifted. The drawings no longer lived only in the quiet room above the print shop. They had entered other minds, stripped of purpose, given a new story that had nothing to do with muscle bands or angles. Elias stepped into the hall, the case held tight at his side, aware that each pair of eyes that met his now carried a question he had not planned to answer. Chapter 8. Rumor. By the next afternoon, Elias could feel the change in the building before anyone spoke to him. The hallways sounded the same, shoes on stone, doors closing, a cough from a study room, yet the air carried a new edge. Conversations stopped when he passed. Heads turned, then turned away. A quiet that was not calm followed him like a thin cloak. He kept his posture straight and his pace steady. He told himself the best answer to noise was order. He went to lecture, sat in his usual seat, and opened his notebook to a clean page. Professor Linton spoke of ligaments and joint strain, chalk tapping the board in sharp clicks. Elias copied each term with care. His hand did not tremble. Still, he felt eyes on him. Not the normal glance that drifted over a room, but the look that searched for a flaw, the look that expected a confession. When the lecture ended, he gathered his papers and stood. Martin was at the aisle, not smiling now. They want you upstairs, Martin said in a low voice. Who is they? Elias asked. Martin's eyes slid to the side, as if the walls might have ears. Dean Havers. And Linton, Elias nodded once and walked without hurry. He climbed the stairs to the faculty corridor, where the rugs were thicker and the lamps were brighter. A clerk pointed him to a closed door. Elias knocked. Enter, a voice called. The room held 2 desks and a tall cabinet with glass doors. Books lined the walls. Dean Havers sat behind the larger desk, hands folded. Professor Linton stood near the window with his back straight, face blank. On the desk between them lay Elias's string-tied bundle. The knot had been untied and tied again, not with his hand. Elias stopped just inside the door. Sir, he said to the dean, then nodded to the professor. Dean Havers did not return the greeting. Mr. Harrow, he said, we have been informed of certain materials in your possession. Elias kept his voice even. They are anatomical reference drawings. Professor Linton turned from the window. Reference, he repeated, as if tasting the word for poison. Dean Havers picked up a sheet and held it in the air. Do you deny that this depicts a nude woman? It depicts a human form, Elias said. Answer the question, the dean said. Yes, Elias replied. It is a nude model. Used for study. Linton's mouth tightened. This is not an art school, he said. We do not encourage such indulgence. Elias felt a sharp pull in his chest, but he kept his face calm. It is not indulgence. The current charts are inaccurate. They omit key features. They present a body that does not match the patients we treat. Dean Havers set the sheet down. This is not a discussion of illustration style, he said. This concerns conduct and propriety. The word propriety landed like a lid placed over a pot. Elias heard it and knew at once what this meeting was and was not. They were not here to ask if the work helped patients. They were here to protect the school's name. "I have not behaved improperly," Elias said. There was no contact, no lewd talk, no public display. Professor Linton stepped closer to the desk. "A man does not need contact to stain himself," he said. "You have placed yourself in a position that invites suspicion." Elias looked at the drawings on the desk, at the careful lines, the notes in the margins, the small marks that recorded angle, tension, stance. Nothing on the page spoke of desire, yet he felt his stomach turn not at the accusation, but at the thin place inside him where the accusation could catch. He had told himself he was pure in thought, clean in aim. He had built that story like a wall. Now, under the dean's stare, he saw a crack. Not a crack of action, but of feeling. He could not say, with full honesty, that his mind had been as cold as a ruler. He had paused. He had lingered. He had been aware of warmth, of breath, of the fact that the form before him was alive. He had not crossed the lines they agreed on, but he had felt the pull of being human in a room that demanded he pretend he was only mind and hand. Dean Havers leaned back in his chair. "Who is the woman?" he asked. Elias's jaw tightened. "A professional model," he said. "Name," the dean said. Elias held still. "I will not provide it," he replied. Professor Linton's eyes narrowed. "So you protect her?" "I protect her privacy," Elias said. Dean Havers tapped the desk once. Slow. "Your refusal suggests you know the association is improper." "No," Elias said. "It suggests I know what your questions will do to her life." For the first time, the dean's calm face shifted. "You are a student," he said. "You do not lecture us on consequence." Elias felt heat rise again, and he forced it down. "Then lecture me on patient harm," he said before he could stop himself. "Because the harm is real. We use drawings that smooth over what should be known. Women suffer because their bodies are treated like rumor instead of fact." The room went quiet. Professor Linton's eyes flashed, then went hard. Dean Havers stared at Elias as if seeing him for the first time, not as a promising student but as a risk. "This is not your place," Linton said. Dean Havers lifted the bundle and retied the string with slow hands. "Here is what will happen," he said. "You will surrender these materials. You will cease this activity. You will distance yourself from the matter. If you do so, we may contain the damage." Elias looked at the bundle. He pictured Mara, calm on the platform, speaking of pain called mood, of bodies treated like stories. He pictured her name, if it left his mouth, carried into rooms where men spoke in low voices. "I will not name her," Elias said. Dean Havers's face hardened. "Then you force us to consider disciplinary action." Elias nodded once, slow. "I understand," he said, though his stomach felt hollow. He left the room with his hands empty, the door closing behind him with a soft click. In the hall, the light looked too bright. The rug under his shoes muffled his steps, yet he felt as if the whole building could hear him. He told himself again that he had done nothing wrong. Then, in the same breath, he felt the smaller truth that troubled him more, that even with clean hands, a man could still carry a private shame he had not planned to face. Chapter 9. Withdrawal. The studio felt smaller when Elias unlocked the door that evening. The air was warm from the stove, but the warmth did not reach him. He stood just inside, hat still in his hand, listening to the quiet as if the room might speak first. The platform, the chair, the lamps on their stools all waited in the same places. Nothing had changed, yet everything had. Mara arrived a few minutes later. She shook the damp from her sleeves and closed the door behind her. She saw his face at once and stopped near the wall. "They have spoken to you," she said. Elias nodded. He set his case on the table but did not open it. Yes, she did not ask who they were. She stepped onto the platform and let her wrap rest on the chair, then looked at him, waiting for the words he had brought up the stairs with him like a weight. "We must stop," he said. The sentence hung in the air, plain and final. Mara did not move. "Must," she repeated, as if testing the shape of the word. "They have the drawings," he went on. "They call them improper. They asked for your name." "And you did not give it," she said. "No." A small breath left her. Not relief, not sorrow, just air. "Good," she said. Elias gripped the back of the chair. "They will act if I continue. They may dismiss me. My place at the hospital, my record, all of it could be lost. Mara's eyes stayed on his. And so we must stop, she said again, this time not as a question. It is for your safety as well, Elias added too quickly. If your name were known. Mara raised a hand, not to silence him, but to slow him. Do not dress it in care for me, she said, voice calm. This is fear. Elias flinched as if struck, though her tone had not risen. I am trying to protect you, he said. You are trying to protect yourself, she replied, which is not a crime. But call it what it is. He looked at the floor. The boards showed thin lines where wood had split over years. He followed one line with his eyes. I thought the work would speak for itself, he said. That they would see the need. They do not want to see, Mara said. They want to keep their rooms quiet and their names clean. Elias swallowed. If I continue, they will look harder. They will search for you. Mara stepped down from the platform and moved closer to the stove. She wrapped the wool around her shoulders, though the room was warm. You speak as if the risk has only just arrived, she said. For you, maybe. For me, it was there the day you knocked on the studio door. He closed his eyes for a moment. I know, he said, though the words felt thin. Do you? She asked. Not sharp, only steady. When a woman like me is named in rooms like theirs, doors close, work dries up. Landlords listen to talk. Shopkeepers change their faces. I would not let. You would not be asked, she said. Silence filled the space between them, thicker than before. The lamps, unlit, stood like watchful eyes. Elias lifted his head. I am not ashamed of the work, he said. Only of the harm it may bring you. Mara studied him for a long moment. You are ashamed of more than that, she said quietly. You are ashamed that you are not as untouched as you wish to be. He did not answer. The truth of it sat in his chest like a stone. I have worked with many men, she went on. Some stare as if I am not there. Some stare as if I am all they see. You tried to be neither. That was honest, in its way. Elias felt his throat tighten. I did not cross the lines we set, he said. No, Mara agreed. You did not. She stepped closer to the table and touched the edge with her fingertips. But lines inside a person are harder to keep straight than lines on paper. He let out a slow breath. I thought I could hold this apart from myself, he said. Mara gave a small nod. So did I, she said. They stood facing each other, the space between them filled with all the hours of stillness, the shared quiet, the talk by the stove. None of it had broken the rules. None of it could continue. When do we stop? Mara asked. Now, Elias said. She nodded once. She gathered her wrap tighter, then moved toward the door. At the threshold, she paused. You were right about one thing, she said without turning. The charts are wrong. Elias felt a sharp ache behind his ribs. I know, he replied. She opened the door and stepped into the stairwell. Her steps faded down the stairs one by one. The studio fell silent, empty in a way it had not been before, as if the air itself had been cleared of something it did not know it needed. Elias stood alone beside the unlit lamps, his hands hanging at his sides, aware that the work had ended not with a shout or a slammed door, but with a quiet that would follow him long after he left the room. Chapter 10. The Offer of Safety. Elias was called back to the faculty wing 2 days after the first meeting, not by a letter on fine paper, but by a clerk with a stiff face who spoke his name as if it were a task. He walked the same corridor with thick rugs and bright lamps, the kind of hall made to quiet footsteps and soften voices. The air held polish and old paper, and the walls carried framed portraits of men with calm eyes and tight mouths. Elias felt those eyes follow him as he passed, not as paint, but as a warning of what the school valued. He knocked at Dean Havers's door. A voice told him to enter. The office was warm, kept that way by a small grate that glowed behind a brass screen. Dean Havers sat behind the desk with his hands folded, and Professor Linton stood near the window with his back straight as a post. Between them, centered like an object in a lesson, lay Elias's drawings tied with fresh string. The knot was neat, as if the papers were not only seized but corrected. Sit down, Mr. Harrow, Dean Havers said. Elias sat in the chair across from the desk and placed his hat on his knee. He folded his hands over it to keep them still. He kept his face calm the way he had been taught to keep it calm when a patient spoke of pain. Professor Linton did not sit. He watched as if sitting would be an approval he did not wish to give. Dean Havers spoke first. His tone was smooth, almost kind, and that made Elias more wary than anger would have. "You are a strong student," the dean said. "Your examination marks are high. Your reports from the clinic are favorable. You have a future if you choose to keep it." Elias waited. He did not fill the quiet. Professor Linton stepped closer to the desk. "We have no wish to ruin a man with promise," he said. "We prefer that you take instruction and correct course." Elias kept his eyes on the bundle. "What course do you wish me to take?" he asked. Dean Havers placed one hand on the papers, palm down, as if holding them in place. "You will destroy these sheets," he said. "Here, now, in our presence." He nodded toward a shallow metal tray set on the desk, along with a matchbox and a small tin of lamp oil. The tools were laid out with care, like instruments, before a procedure. Elias felt his mouth go dry. He did not move his hands from his hat. "And after that?" he asked. "You will give your word that you will not continue this activity," the dean said. "You will not rent rooms for this purpose. You will not seek out this woman again. You will not speak of this matter to other students." The words were clear. They were not a request, they were terms. "And in return?" Elias asked. Professor Linton answered instead of the dean. "In return, you will be allowed to proceed with your studies," he said. "There will be no formal charge, no hearing, no stain on your file. The talk will fade if you stop feeding it." Elias looked up at the dean. "This is rehabilitation," he said, using the word the school liked, though it tasted wrong. Dean Havers gave a small nod. "It is an opportunity to step away from a mistake before it defines you," he said. Elias felt a hard knot form in his chest. "You call it a mistake," he said. Dean Havers leaned back a fraction. "You placed yourself in a position that invites suspicion," he said. "You must understand how this looks." "How it looks," Elias repeated. Professor Linton's face stayed stiff. "A physician's name must be beyond question," he said. "Patients trust a man whose life appears ordered. When a man is linked to indecent work, that trust cracks." Elias glanced down at the matchbox. "Indecent," he said. Dean Havers lifted one sheet from the bundle and held it out as if presenting evidence. "It is a nude figure," he said. "No matter what you call it, that is what it is." "It is a human body," Elias said. His voice stayed level, but he felt heat rising in his neck. "The same kind of body that comes into our clinic with pain." Professor Linton's eyes narrowed. "Do not speak as if you are the only one who cares for patients," he said. Elias pressed his fingers harder over his hat. "Then speak of the charts," he said. "Speak of what they leave out. Speak of how often women are told their pain is nothing." Dean Havers' expression did not change much, but his voice cooled. "This is not a lecture room," he said. "You are not here to argue about teaching materials. You are here because you risk the standing of this school and your own standing along with it." Elias took a slow breath. "So the school's name comes first," he said. "It comes with your future," Dean Havers replied. "You cannot help anyone if you are expelled. You cannot treat patients if you are removed from the program. You may believe you are acting for truth, but truth does not feed you if your place here is gone." The dean's words were careful, shaped to sound like wisdom. Elias felt their pull. He saw himself in a small room years from now, working long hours, building respect, gaining rank, and perhaps then changing the charts from within. The plan had a clean shape. It asked for one thing now, obedience. Professor Linton pushed the tray closer. "Do it," he said. "End this foolishness." Elias looked at the bundle again. He pictured the lamplit studio, the silence, Mara's steady voice in the break, the way she spoke of a sister lost because no one listened. He pictured the pencil marks, the small notes at the margins, the lines made with care. Nothing on those pages was made for show. Yet he knew the men across from him would never grant that. They had already named the work, and their name was stronger than his. Dean Havers leaned forward, voice low. "You have been given a path," he said. "Take it. Burn the sheets, sever the tie, and this will be done. You can walk out of this room and continue your training. Or you can refuse and force us to act." Elias's gaze moved from the matchbox to the tray to the bundle. He ddid not reach for the matches. He did not stand. He sat still, feeling the offered safety press in around him like the thick rug under his feet, soft and quiet and meant to swallow sound. Chapter 11. Mara's Consequences. Mara knew the talk had reached her before any man said her name. It showed in small things first. A door that used to open at once stayed shut while a bolt scraped slow. A voice that used to greet her went quiet. A coin that used to be placed in her hand was set on a table instead, as if skin could pass stain. She walked through the same streets, but the streets felt less like a place and more like a test. At the first studio, the painter did not invite her in. He stood in the doorway with his cap in his hands, eyes fixed on the floorboards between them. "I cannot hire you this week," he said. Mara kept her face calm. "You hired me last week," she replied. He swallowed. "Yes, but there is trouble. People are saying things. People always say things," Mara said. He shook his head without lifting his eyes. "This is different. They say you were seen with a medical student. They say drawings were found." Mara felt a cold line move through her chest, not fear, not surprise, but a hard kind of anger that stayed quiet. "You do not know what was drawn," she said. He lifted his gaze for a moment, and she saw worry there, not malice. "It does not matter," he said. "If I take you, my work will be questioned. Men who buy portraits will stop coming. I have a wife." Mara nodded once. "Then you will not hire me," she said. "I am sorry," he said, and stepped back as if the words might cover the gap. She turned away without a scene. She did not raise her voice. She did not let him see how the purse under her skirt felt lighter than it should. She walked 2 streets over to another studio, then another. At each door, she heard a new excuse, shaped in different words but made of the same fear. One man said his room was already booked. Another said he had no need for a model now. A third, a younger painter with red hands from cold, spoke plain. "They told me not to," he said. "They said it would ruin me." By the time she reached her room again, the sun had dropped behind the roofs, and the air had turned sharp. She climbed the stairs and went inside. Boots heavy, hands aching from the cold, she set her wrap on the chair and took the purse from its place. She poured the coins into her palm and counted them once, then again, as if a second count might make more appear. It did not. She sat on the bed and stared at the small heap of metal. Rent in 3 days, food for the week, coal for the stove, soap, thread. Each need had a price, and each coin had to stand for more than its weight. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Dallow stood there with her arms crossed. Her eyes moved over Mara's face and then away. "You have had visitors," she said. "I have not," Mara replied. "Men asked about you," Mrs. Dallow said. "Not from the shops. They spoke like clerks. They asked if you were the woman who goes to studios." Mara felt her stomach tighten. "What did you tell them?" she asked. "I told them nothing," Mrs. Dallow said, though the way she said it made Mara think she had told them enough. "But you should be careful. People do not like scandal in a respectable building." Mara looked past her into the hall, where the lamp flickered and made long shadows. "This building was never respectable," she said. Mrs. Dallow's lips pressed thin. "Do not be proud," she said. "Pride brings a harder fall." Mara kept her voice even. "I am not proud," she said. "I am tired." Mrs. Dallow left with a stiff nod. The door closed and Mara was alone again with the coins. She stood and lit the lamp. She took the worn book from the shelf and set it on the table, but she did not open it. Her mind would not settle into lines of print. It kept returning to the studio with the lamps, the steady scratch of pencil, the way Elias spoke when he forgot to guard every word. She had known from the start that the work would cost her more than him. She had agreed anyway. She did not regret it, not because it had been easy or bold, but because it had been real. In most rooms where she posed, men wanted her to become an idea, a muse, a warning, a prize. They did not want the plain truth of a body that carried marks of life and small uneven shifts that could not be smoothed away without a lie. Elias had wanted the plain truth, even if he had tried to hold it at arm's length. Mara moved to the basin and washed her hands, slow, as if washing could clear the day from her skin. The water was cold. She dried her hands on a cloth with frayed edges and looked at her face in the small mirror. Her eyes looked back steady. The world could call her dirty, but the word did not fit. The dirt was not on her. It was in the way others spoke of her, the way they took a body and turned it into a story they could use. She sat again and pushed the coins into two small piles, one for rent, one for food. The rent pile was not enough. She could borrow, but borrowing always came with a hook. She could find other work, perhaps sewing late into the night, but sewing paid slow. Her throat tightened, and she pressed two fingers to her lips until the feeling passed. She thought of the drawings, how they had shown the body without soft lies. She thought of the school charts, smooth and wrong. She did not have words for what would happen next, not in a grand way, not as a speech. She only knew this. There was nothing shameful in accuracy. Shame lived in distortion, in the neat cover placed over what should be known. The lamp burned low. Mara gathered the coins back into the purse and tied it tight. Then she took her wrap from the chair and laid it over the bed like a second blanket. Tomorrow she would go out again. She would knock on doors again. She would keep her back straight and her voice plain. The world could tighten its circle around her, but it could not make her agree that truth was indecent. Chapter 12. The Return. Elias found the address in the back of his notebook where he had written it once and then tried not to look at it. The page was worn at the corner from being turned and turned again. He closed the book, put on his coat, and walked through streets he did not often use, past shops where men shouted prices and carts rolled slow through the mud. The sky hung low and grey, pressing the roofs down. The building was narrow, brick dark with damp. He climbed the stairs and felt each step in his legs as if he were walking toward an exam he could not prepare for. He knocked. Mara opened the door. She looked thinner than he remembered, not in body but in the space around her, as if the world had pulled in closer. Her eyes stayed steady. "You found the place," she said. "Yes," he replied. He did not step inside until she moved aside. The room was small and neat. A basin by the wall, a shelf with a book, a chair, a bed. A lamp burned low on the table. He stood with his hat in his hands. "I am sorry," he said at once. "For what part?" she asked. "For stopping the work," he said. "For saying it was to protect you when it was fear." Mara nodded once. "Sit," she said. She took the chair and left the bed for him. He sat on the edge of the bed, back straight. The room felt too quiet. He could hear his own breath. "They offered me a way out," he said. "To burn the drawings. To give my word that I would not continue." "And?" she asked. "I did not burn them," he said. "Not yet." Mara watched his face. "But you might," she said. "I do not know," he answered, and the honesty of it stung. "I have told myself I act for truth, but I see now I have also acted to keep myself clean in my own eyes. I wanted to be untouched by what the work meant." Mara leaned back in the chair. "You wanted to be only mine," she said. "Yes." He looked down at his hands. "But I am not. I was aware of you, of the room, of being a man in that space. I told myself that if I did not act on it, then it did not matter. That was not honest." Mara's voice stayed calm. "Awareness is not a crime," she said. "You did not break the rules we set. You did not turn the work into something else. But I wished to think I was above it," he said. "That I could stand outside the body and map it like a wall or a table." "You cannot step outside being human," Mara replied. "The question is what you do with that fact." He looked up. "I did nothing," he said. "You did the work," she said. "You kept to the lines we drew. That is the point." Silence settled between them, not heavy, not easy, but clear. The lamp flame moved once and steadied. "They say the drawings are indecent," Elias said. Mara gave a small breath that might have been a laugh. "Indecent to whom?" she asked. "A body does not become shameful because it is seen with care." "They speak of appearance," he said. "Of trust, of how things look. They mean comfort," she said. "They do not want to see what disturbs them." Elias felt the knot in his chest ease a little. "If I burn them, I keep my place," he said. "I may rise in rank and change things later. And if you burn them," Mara asked, "what changes now?" He had no answer ready. He looked at the shelf, at the worn book, at the lamp. "Nothing," he said at last. Mara folded her hands in her lap. "I have lost work," she said. "Men close doors. Landlords ask questions. I knew that might come. I am sorry, he said again. Do not waste the loss, she replied. He met her eyes. You think the drawing should stand, he said. I think what is true should not be hidden because it makes some men uneasy, she said. If they call it obscene, that is their word. It is not the truth. Elias sat very still. The choice he had tried to delay stood plain between them. They will punish me, he said. Perhaps, Mara said. But you will know what you chose. He let out a slow breath. I wanted to believe I could do good later by being quiet now, he said. And maybe you could, she said, but do not tell yourself it is for truth. It is for safety. He nodded. The word landed clean. Safety. They did not shake hands. They did not make grand vows. They sat in the small room with the lamp and the quiet. And the work that had begun in a rented studio found a new shape, no longer private, no longer only lines on paper, but a stand neither of them could fully step away from without lying to themselves. Chapter 13. The Defense. Elias did not sleep much the night before he submitted the plates. He lay on his narrow bed with his eyes open, the ceiling dark above him, the air cold at the edges of the room. When he closed his eyes, he saw the tray on Dean Havers's desk and the matchbox beside it. When he opened them again, he saw the drawings in his mind, stacked and tied, the lines made with care that did not ask for pardon. At dawn he rose, washed his face in cold water, and dressed in his best shirt. He packed the plates into a stiff folder and wrapped the folder in oilcloth to keep out the damp. Then he wrote the letter. He did not dress it in fine phrases. He used plain words, each one chosen as if it might be tested. He wrote of patient harm caused by false diagrams. He wrote of accuracy as a tool, not a display. He wrote that the plates were made for teaching, to correct gaps that placed lives at risk. He did not write Mara's name. He called her a professional model, hired under strict terms, and he stated those terms in short lines. No contact, no indecent talk, no audience, work only. When the letter was done, he signed it and read it again, slow, then folded it and placed it on top of the plates. The act felt like placing a body on a table, not for shame but for truth. He walked to the school through a mist that clung to the streets. The building rose from the fog like a dark ship, its stone walls damp and cold. Inside, the halls were already full. Students moved in clusters, voices low. Some looked at him and then away. Others stared as if they were watching a trial. Elias kept his gaze forward and his steps even. A clerk led him not to the lecture hall, but to a smaller chamber used for formal reviews. The room had a long table and hard chairs set in a line. Tall windows let in pale light that made faces look worn. At the far end sat Dean Havers with two other faculty men Elias did not know, both older, both stiff in posture. Professor Linton stood near the wall, hands behind his back, eyes sharp. A younger doctor sat on the side, a man Elias had seen in the clinic, Dr. Say, who had once listened longer than most when a woman spoke of pain. Mr. Harrow, Dean Havers said. You have chosen to proceed? Yes, Elias replied. He set the folder on the table in front of him. He did not sit until he was told. Dean Havers opened the folder and slid the letter out first. He read it in silence, lips moving once as if tasting a phrase. Then he passed it down the line. While the men read, Elias watched their faces. One frowned. One lifted his brows, not in interest but in disbelief. Professor Linton stared at Elias as if he were a stain that would not lift. After the letter they lifted the plates. The papers made a soft sound as they slid free. The drawings lay on the table one by one, no color, no flourish, only line, shadow, and note. The figures were plain, not posed for charm, only set in stances that showed structure. Even so, Elias saw one of the older men stiffen at the first full view. This is obscene, that man said at once. Dr. Say's eyes moved over the page. It is anatomy, he said, voice quiet. The older man snapped his gaze toward him. A nude woman drawn by a student, he said. Call it what you like. Dean Havers raised a hand. We will speak in order, he said. He looked at Elias. Why did you do this? Elias had rehearsed many answers, but he kept to the simple one. Because the charts we use are wrong, he said. They remove details that matter in care. They make the body look neat when it is not neat. That gap leads to missed signs and poor choices in clinic. Professor Linton stepped forward. "You are not a publisher," he said. "You are not an artist. You are a student with too much pride." Elias felt heat rise, but he kept his voice level. "Pride did not bring women to the clinic with pain they were told to ignore," he said. "The plates are meant to help us see what we pretend is not there." One of the faculty men, thin and grey-haired, tapped the margin notes with a finger. "These notes are precise," he said. "Angles, stance, breath." He looked at Elias. "Did you consult any instructor?" "No," Elias said. "I knew it would be refused before it was examined." Dean Havers's eyes narrowed. "So you chose secrecy?" "I chose privacy," Elias replied. "The model's name would ruin her. The work was meant to be judged by merit, not by rumor." The older man scoffed. "Model," he said. "You keep saying the word as if it cleans the act." Dr. Say looked up from the plates. "If the model was paid and treated with strict terms, then it is work," he said. "We use bodies in the lab without asking if the subject makes us uncomfortable." Professor Linton's voice sharpened. "Do not compare this to the lab," he said. "The lab is sanctioned." Dr. Say held his gaze. "Sanction does not change truth," he replied. The room went quiet. Elias heard his own pulse in his ears. He felt the tension in his shoulders and forced them down. Dean Havers folded Elias's letter and set it aside. "This hearing is not a debate on illustration," he said. "It is a review of your conduct and judgment. You have placed the school at risk." Elias nodded once. "I understand," he said. The dean looked at the plates again, then at Elias. "We will deliberate," he said. "You will wait outside." Elias gathered nothing. The plates stayed on the table, held by hands that had not made them. He stood, gave a short nod, and walked to the hall. The door shut behind him. He leaned against the wall and stared at the floor, aware that inside the room, men were deciding not only what he had done, but what kind of truth the school could bear to allow. Chapter 14. Loss. The letter came 3 days after the hearing. It was sealed with the school crest and delivered by a boy who did not wait for a reply. Elias broke the seal at his desk in the small room he rented near the hospital, the paper stiff between his fingers, the ink lines sharp and clean. He knew before he reached the end what it would say, not from pride, but from the way the school moved when it wanted a problem to fade without noise. His place in the program remained, the letter said, but his name had been removed from the list for the surgical fellowship in the capital. The committee had concerns about judgment and discretion. He would be assigned instead to the municipal hospital on the east side, where the wards were crowded and the name carried less weight. The decision was final. The words were polite, but the message was hard. His future would be smaller than it had been 2 weeks ago. Elias set the letter down and stared at the wall across from his bed. A thin crack ran from the window frame to the floor. He followed it with his eyes as if it were a path on a map. The fellowship had been a narrow bridge into rooms where a man could rise fast, where a signature could open doors, where a voice could shift policy in a meeting without raising a hand. Now that bridge was gone. In its place stood a long hall of heavy work and slow notice. He did not tear the letter. He did not pace. He folded it once and placed it under the ink bottle on his desk, as if weight could keep it from changing his life. The bottle left a faint ring, where an old drop had dried and spread into the fibers. He watched the dark circle for a moment and thought of how marks stayed even when no one spoke of them. At the hospital, word had already moved ahead of him. It did not travel as a clear statement, but as a tilt of the head, a pause before greeting, a half smile that did not reach the eyes. A nurse who once greeted him with ease now nodded with her lips pressed thin. A senior doctor looked at him longer than needed when he entered the ward, then turned away as if he had finished the check. No one spoke of the hearing in open terms, yet it walked beside him through each room like a shadow that kept pace. His duties were not light. The municipal wards were full, beds set too close, air thick with cough and damp cloth. Women sat on hard chairs with shawls pulled tight, waiting to be seen. Elias moved from bed to bed with his notebook in his hand. He asked clear questions and waited for answers without cutting them short, even when the line at the door grew long. He did not pretend the work was noble. He only did it right, one patient at a time, the way he had promised himself he would. Once, in the stairwell, he passed 2 interns who stopped talking when he came near. He heard the last word anyway. "Drawings," one said, too low for the room to claim it did not hear. The other gave a short laugh, quick and sharp. Elias did not slow his step. He kept his face still and went down the stairs, letting the sound fade behind him. He told himself the laugh did not matter, yet he felt it lodge in him, not as anger, but as proof that the story attached to his name would not be removed by silence. Across the city, Mara walked the market street with a bundle of cloth under her arm. The studio doors she used to visit had gone quiet to her. At one, the young painter with red hands turned his face away when he saw her, as if the air between them was now unsafe. At another, a bolt slid into place before she could knock. The refusal came fast, without apology, like a rule learned by many at once. She found work where she could. A dress shop agreed to pay her by the piece for hems and patchwork, paid late and counted twice, as if she might cheat them by breathing. She worked with her head bent under poor light until her eyes ached. When the shop was empty, the shopkeeper spoke to her in a flat tone, not cruel, only careful, the way people speak when they fear being linked to someone with a mark. Her landlord began asking small questions with sharp edges. Who came to her door? Where she went in the evening? Whether she planned to stay long? Mrs. Dallow in the next room grew cooler, speaking of other tenants as families and of Mara as you, as if a name might spread trouble. In the lane below, a boy from the print shop shouted a word at her that tried to shrink her into one small thing. Mara did not turn. She kept walking, head up, hands steady, as if the street were a narrow bridge and she would not give it the gift of a stumble. One evening Elias crossed a square near the river and saw Mara on the far side, carrying a basket of cloth. He stopped, the crowd moving around him, and felt his chest tighten. He could have crossed. He could have spoken. Yet he pictured the way talk traveled, the way it latched onto any meeting and made it into proof. He stayed where he was. Mara did not see him, or if she did, she gave no sign. She passed into the street line and was gone. The days settled into a new shape. Elias's coat sleeves wore thin at the elbows. His boots took on the dull shine of long use. His name, once spoken with praise in lecture rooms, now carried a note of caution in hallways, like a warning about a step that might be loose. Mara's name was not spoken in those halls at all, yet the absence did not protect her. It only made the harm quieter. There was no moment when the loss lifted, no letter of recall, no speech that cleared a stain. There was only the steady weight of work and the low sound of breath in crowded rooms, the small choices made one by one, and the knowledge that the world had marked them both in its own way, then moved on as if the mark was the lesson. Chapter 15. Enduring Truth. Months passed, not with a single turn, but with days stacked one on the next like folded sheets in a linen room. Winter gave way to wet spring, then to early summer heat that clung to the wards. Elias learned the rhythm of the municipal hospital the way a man learns the sound of his own steps. The place did not offer fame, it offered need. He rose before dawn and walked through streets that smelled of coal smoke and bread. By the time the first patients filled the benches, he had already checked the night notes, washed his hands until the skin felt tight, and tied his apron with the same knot each day. He moved through the rooms with a steadier pace now, not hurried, not slow but firm. He listened longer than most. He asked women where the pain began, where it moved, what made it worse, what made it ease. He did not let the talk drift into guesses about nerves or worry. When a woman said she could not stand straight, he asked her to show him how she stood at home, not how she stood in the clinic under bright eyes. When a woman said a sharp ache came with breath, he watched the breath, not only the words. He carried new maps in his mind, not only maps of organs, but maps of how bodies held weight and strain. He noticed how a shoulder sat higher after months of lifting a child, how a hip turned slightly from years of one kind of work, how skin and muscle and bone made small changes that charts did not bother to show. He stopped thinking of such details as noise. He treated them as clues. One afternoon, a young doctor in training, a quiet man named Pierce, asked Elias why he took so long with each patient. "You will fall behind," Pierce said. Elias did not look up from his notes. "I would rather be slow than careless," he said. Pierce frowned. "The chief wants speed." "The chief wants the line to move," Elias replied. "The patient wants to be known." Pierce opened his mouth, then shut it. He stayed and watched as Elias checked a woman's side, his hands gentle but sure, his gaze fixed where it needed to be, not where it drifted. Across town, Mara's days had also taken on a steady shape. The sewing work kept her fed, but she did not let it swallow all of her. She had found a small circle of rooms where models still gathered, not the grand studios that sold portraits to men with clean gloves, but practical rooms behind shops and above print houses where artists worked for coins and skill, not praise. She began speaking to younger women who came to those rooms with the same tight look she had once seen in her own face. Some were new to the work and did not know how quickly a friendly word could turn into a demand. Mara did not give them fear. She gave them rules. Set the pay first, she told them. Set the hours. Set the breaks. If a man jokes, you end the session. If he brings a friend, you end the session. If he asks for a pose that feels wrong, you say no. One girl, barely grown, asked her why she sounded like a clerk. Because you are selling time and skill, Mara said, not silence. She taught them how to hold still without harm. How to shift weight when a foot went numb. How to breathe slow so the pose stayed true. She taught them to keep a rap within reach, not to hide, but to remind a room that they were in charge of what happened next. The talk about her did not vanish. It faded in some places and stayed sharp in others, yet she had stopped waiting for the world to grant her a clean name. She moved as if her own opinion was enough, because in the end it was the only opinion she could control. On a warm day in late summer, Elias left the hospital after a long shift and walked toward the river to clear his head. The light was low, gold at the edges, and the air smelled of water and mud. He saw Mara near a stall where a vendor sold thread and small needles. She was not alone. Two younger women stood with her, listening as she spoke, her hands moving in small short gestures. Elias stopped at a distance. He did not want to break the scene. Mara turned her head as if she felt his presence. Their eyes met across the street. She nodded once, plain, not warm, not cold. He crossed to her. The younger women watched him, cautious. Mara spoke first. "This is Elias," she said, giving only the name. He paid fair. He kept terms. Elias felt the weight of the simple words. "Hello," he said to the young women, then to Mara. "You are well?" "I am here," Mara said. He nodded. "So am I." They stood in a calm quiet for a moment, the street noise moving around them. The younger women shifted, unsure if they should stay. Mara gave them a look, and they stepped a few paces away to examine spools of thread, still near enough to hear if needed. "I heard you were sent to the east side," Mara said. "Yes," Elias replied. "It suits the work." Mara's eyes searched his face. "Do you regret it?" Elias thought of the fellowship he had lost, the clean halls, the polished words. Then he thought of the ward benches full of women who no longer left with a shrug as their only answer. "Some days," he said. "Not all?" Mara nodded, as if that was the most honest reply. "The drawings," she said. "I kept copies," he answered. "Locked." "Safe, good," she said. They did not speak of the hours in the lamplit room. They did not speak of the match tray or the dean's calm voice. They had no need to rehearse the past. The past had already done its work. A week later, in a different building across the city, a first-year medical student sat in a bright study room with a new set of teaching plates spread on the desk. The paper was clean, the print sharp. The student traced a line with his finger, eyes focused, brow drawn in thought. He did not know the name of the man who first drew those lines. He did not know the cost paid to make them. He only knew that the plate made the body make sense in a way the older charts did not. He turned the page and kept studying, the room quiet around him, learning from truth that had outlasted the noise that tried to bury it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please hit the like and subscribe button. And if you have any suggestions for stories you would like, comment them below. On the right is a video of mine. YouTube thinks you'll like. Watch it if you would like more of this content. Have happy dreams.